We're back, speaking of New York.
So, Judge Lewis, you practice family law now. You're a judge in the Superior Court here in Los Angeles County. There are a lot of people listening to this podcast who are either thinking about divorce or contemplating filing. There must be some things that they ought to know, should know, things you'd like them to know and consider in making their plans. What would be your advice to our listeners?
Well, my first advice might sound antithetical, but my first advice would be that if there isn't domestic violence and there isn't risk to the kids, and I want to stress that, no domestic violence, no substance abuse, no risk to kids, and it's just a marriage that maybe has had some difficulty, try some marriage counseling first. Our law actually has as a social policy to encourage marriage, and that's why it takes 6 months to get a divorce between filing and the earliest date that you can get it, because there's lots of resources that show that couples reconcile. And so my first advice would be, see if you can reconcile. Try to find out what caused the happiest relationship in the world to turn into the most unhappy relationship in the world. And so my first advice would be, as long as it's safe and nobody's at risk, there's no harm in trying to see if you can resolve that marriage. If that's not the case, or you just aren't interested and you want out, doesn't matter what they say or do, meaning the other party, then so be it. Do your homework. Find a lawyer who is someone that you can afford, someone that has sufficient expertise, someone that has a good reputation, and look for the alternative to the full litigation posture. I've always said from the bench, and I'll say it here because I think it's worth saying, and not because I was prompted to say it, because you prompted me to say nothing other than ask me some questions. And here it is. The clients should learn to listen to their lawyers more and the people that they know at Starbucks less. Because the people at Starbucks are not the experts. And the people that you're paying money to represent you are the experts. And frequently, I think the family law lawyer, it certainly happened to me, will listen to this conversation. Well, I have a friend who says, my friend said that this is what should happen. Why isn't this happening? Those kinds of comments, I think frequently the client will listen to their friends from Starbucks more than they'll listen to what their professional is telling them. So my first piece of advice is that the family law lawyer really earns his or her fees when they tell you the way it is, not the way you wish it would be. And I think it's important for the client to listen carefully, especially to the advice that they don't like, because it's the job of the family law lawyer to make sure that the client hears the truth, not just what they want to hear. You can go buy somebody all the Starbucks you want and get them to tell you what you want to hear, but the family law lawyer really earns his or her money when they tell you the way it really is. You would never want a doctor to go, oh yeah, you're right, your friend at Starbucks knows more about medicine. And I think that that's the one area that's often the most difficult for the family law lawyer, as well as, of course, for the client, because there's sometimes some very hard and difficult news that's communicated in these very painful and difficult cases.
Mm-hmm. I've come to the conclusion that the hardest advice a lawyer has to give to a client oftentimes is stop. It's over. You've gone as far as you can go. There's no more waiting. It's time to bring things to a conclusion. Last year, Alec Baldwin published a book, A Promise to Ourselves, in which he described a nightmare divorce that lasted over 8 years after a 10-year marriage and cost over $3 million. And he said at page 3, to be pulled into the American family law system in most states is like being tied to the back of a pickup truck and dragged down a gravel road late at night. No one can hear your cries and complaints, and it's not over until they say it's over. And he says a lot of things in the book, but one of the things that I like very much is he says if you're in a lawyer's office longer than 10 minutes and they haven't used the word mediation, get up and leave. You're in the wrong lawyer's office. I'm wondering, Judge Lewis, if you had an opportunity to read Alec Baldwin's book.
Well, I haven't, and of course, it's a controversial case, and certainly some of the things that Mr. Baldwin has to say and that you've just quoted, I agree with. It's a case that's still pending in our court, so I'm not going to make any more comment about it, other than to say I agree that it's important that every lawyer explore all of the options, and I think it is due diligence to tell the client about the mediation option and what that looks like, what the benefits of it are, what the cost savings are. I agree with that statement in general. It doesn't mean I adopt everything that Mr. Baldwin has had to say about our family court system, because I don't. But I do agree with that statement. I think it's important to have a lawyer who is willing to discuss with the client the option of a mediated resolution, because very candidly, it's the emotions that drive most of family law. And I think that some have said if you just got the clients out of the way, the lawyers could settle the case in 5 minutes. That might say too much about lawyer hubris, but it could also say something a great deal about the fact that the clients need to hear the truth, and they need to get help for the emotional pain and trauma. And the courthouse is not the place to get the help for the emotional pain of a broken family. Through a spiritual counselor, through a mental health professional, the counsel of friends, all of the above, and the sensitivity of a lawyer who doesn't let the client's anger or pain drive the case. Those are really, really important things.
A little earlier, you made a very significant distinction between personal injury cases and contract cases, civil cases, and family law, where relationships are ongoing, and as a parent of adult children, you've probably learned that parenting is a life sentence, and so even though people choose to end their marriage, their relationships go on. And so I'm wondering if it isn't advisable in all cases to suggest that coaches be brought in to work with the couples so that they can improve their communication skills, work on bringing their co-parenting strategies into harmony, and hopefully find closure to their emotional agendas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that that's a good tool that's available, assuming the resource of finances are available to do it. I think that the first couple of years, the year of the breakup and maybe the year after the breakup, some families aren't ready to understand that. I know personally, when I grant a judgment of dissolution of marriage and there isn't domestic violence, I will remind the parents of their children by their names and say words that are similar to what you just said, the reminder that parenting is a lifetime, and your relationship as husband and wife is over, but your relationship is not over. You share children that are going to graduate from college, bring you grandchildren, have marriages. Dads are going to walk daughters down the aisle, and mom is hopefully going to be there too, and dad's hopefully going to be invited to participate in that task. So it's not over. Mm-hmm. And so coaching, I think, is a good tool. I think that the more parents can find tools that keep them out of the courthouse. One Texas judge said it in perhaps somewhat brash language. I wouldn't say it as brashly, but his way of saying it is, I don't love your kids. I don't know your kids. How could I ever love your kids? I've never known them. no one can love your kids like you love your kids. So don't let me be the one that decides what's going to happen with your kids. You find a way to find the best resolution if you can without having to take it into the court system to make the best decision for your child. And coaching, I think, is a great tool for that. It may be that it's something that has to be heard a little later on in the process. I think that one of the things that happens too frequently is a rush to use the court process as a venue to play out the emotions rather than to carefully deliberate about what's in the best interest of the kids and preserving resources for them and for the parents. It bears consideration. There's no doubt about it that the parents are the ones that can best decide. I think that the other thing that has to be balanced into that comment is there are some cases where there's domestic violence where it may not be appropriate for a spouse without some assistance to try to negotiate because of issues that related to victimization and whatnot. But as in the general case where there isn't substance abuse or domestic violence, I think that those are very profound and profound words that are worthy of consideration by everybody in the process.
Your closing advice to parties, to lawyers, to people who are facing a journey to the downtown courthouse, what do you recommend?
Well, I really recommend that you if you're represented by counsel, that you listen carefully to your lawyer about what are the possibilities of range of results and try to find a resolution that you have control over. If you're self-represented, do your best to avail yourself of the various tools that the court has in place, the Resource Center. There are lots of other self-help resources that are available in many counties. There are legal services that are available at low cost that are reputable. If you're self-represented and you're going to use somebody who holds themselves out as a paralegal, check them out and make sure that they're really reputable. And if you're the victim of domestic violence, then get some help. There's lots of tools that are available. For instance, even in Los Angeles County, if you're a person of modest means, you can pick up the telephone from any telephone in Los Angeles County and dial 211 and get connected to county resources that may be able to point you in the direction for the kind of help that you need. And never forget that the person that you're saying all those things about is the parent of the child that you brought into the world with. And so that I think forgetting that is a common problem, and I would hope that parents would remember those things.
So we want to thank the Honorable Judge Thomas Trent Lewis for being with us on Ron and Robert on Divorce. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time.
My pleasure, really.
Thank you, Judge.
And we will see you next time on Ron and Robert on Divorce. Thank you for listening to Ron and Robert on Divorce with California attorneys Ronald Saponchik and Robert Borski, partners in the Law Collaborative Los Angeles. Join us again next week for more California family law with unique and insightful discussion and interviews on all aspects of California family law. With offices in Woodland Hills and Beverly Hills, California, the Law Collaborative Los Angeles, experts in collaborative law and mediation, excellence in litigation.